and welcome back to The Creative Catholics, a podcast on creativity, faith, and the hidden life. I'm your host, Alice Cahill. As always, a huge thank you to Marie Miller for letting us use her music for our intro and outro, and a huge thank you to Riverside that sponsors this episode. We used Riverside to record this episode. If you are interested in recording or editing audio files, please check out the link in the description and in the show notes. Our guest today is Josh Masterson, the Catholic cartoonist who draws a slice of life comic strip about a parish priest named Father Otto. Josh has been drawing his whole life, but it wasn't until about 4 years ago that he decided to take his cartooning more seriously, and it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with Josh and talk about the Catholic cartoon. Please grab whatever creative project you're working on today, and let's chat with Josh Masterson. Thank you so much, Josh, for coming on to the Creative Catholics today. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really, really excited to talk to you about the cartooning work that you've done. And you've told me that you've been drawing your whole life, but you only decided to kind of pursue cartooning seriously about 4 years ago. What gave you the courage to finally say yes to that particular creative calling?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was about 4 years ago when I really started Catholic cartooning, making cartooning more of a profession. But it was around that time that I was really discerning what I was going to do with my life, where I was going to go. At that time, all of my friends were going off to college or dating and things like that. And so I was kind of just taking a look at myself in the mirror and saying, now's the time to decide on who I want to be and what I want to do. And all that to say is, lots of prayer, lots of thinking. And so around that time, as I was drawing a lot, I'm always drawing, but I was drawing illustrations of parish life, is how you could put it. They weren't cartoon. I tried to imitate the style of a famous painter by the name of Norman Rockwell. I'm a big fan of his art. And so I was trying to kind of make Catholic, versions of Norman Rockwell art, depictions of parish life, things that everyone would be familiar with. And so I tried that and I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't very good at capturing the Norman Rockwell style, but that didn't stop me. I still liked the idea of showing parish life. And so I thought, what am I good at? What do I like doing? What comes naturally to me? And that's cartooning. That's something that I had been doing since I was a kid. And it was always more of like a hobby. It was just something I did on the side. I never really thought very seriously about it. And so I thought, what? Why don't I make cartoons, showing parish life? Why don't I use cartoons and mix that with the faith and try that out? And there was really this great sense of peace. I know it sounds silly, it's cartoons. It's a almost kid thing, I guess. But there was this peace with me and this decision, and I really felt that God wanted me to pursue this, that there was really something more to this, something that, this could really be something special to share. And so that was really the start of Catholic cartoons and sharing that online.
That's amazing. And I think, that piece that you're talking about is it's so important, but it's also a great, if you will, quote unquote, kind of sign from God that, that we're on kind of the right path that he wants us to be pursuing. And so I think following that, I think is a really, really good decision when it comes to kind of creativity and which path we should be going with and these sorts of things. And you created a character called Father Otto, who's obviously become such a well-known character in these cartoon series. They're all about Father Otto and the parish. How did he first come to life, and what do you think he reveals about kind of the beauty and the humor of ordinary parish life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, when you think of church, when you think of parish life, the Catholic priest comes to mind. That's a very obvious one. And so, in my early cartoons, my illustrations, I was illustrating a Catholic priest. And at the time, he didn't have a name or anything like that. He was just, this character that I had drawn. And then eventually named him Father Otto, gave him a voice and a personality. But I think that what's great about Father Otto, as a character, is that he's so versatile. And what I mean by that is that he can be in any situation, and there's always going to be a sense of, the faith or God in that situation. It could be like baseball, for instance, right? Baseball isn't inherently about God by any means, but let's say it's a Catholic priest playing baseball. All of a sudden, there's like the fun of baseball, but now you have this priest character who's involved playing baseball, and so seeing this character can bring our minds to God to some degree. So I think in that sense, he works really well.
Yeah. And I think what's amazing too about these cartoons is the fact that, so when I was growing up in the Midwest as well, we had a lot of older parish priests. It was one of those things where I never really thought of a parish priest younger than probably, I don't know, 55, 60 or something. And I met my husband, and his brother is a priest. And the community that his brother is in, we went to spend some time with them before we got married. It's amazing because the community is all young people.
Right.
It's like young nuns, young priests. And I think now I've been talking to a number of my friends back still in the States, and they were saying there's kind of this renewal of younger priests coming back into parish life and those sorts of things, which I think is amazing and fantastic. But these cartoons then, it's like one of those things that I had always had a difficult time kind of imagining a priest in something other than church. So like doing something other than church until I met my brother-in-law, and it's like, oh yeah, they do normal things. But that's what I think this cartoon does such a great job of is this idea that obviously the priest is going to be in the church, but the priest is also going to have a life and do other things as well. How do you think that awareness of a priest has a normal life, what is that signaling to your audience?
Yeah, I think that, you're kind of right on the nose there. Like for me as well, growing up, I always saw priests as just these older men, involved with the church only, very busy. And it wasn't until I moved. So I was originally from Michigan and I moved to Illinois, and we became a part of this one parish. And one of the priests there, he was a younger priest. And so he did a lot of things with the youth, like teen nights and things like that. Or, we'd go on like trips with him. So he was really involved with, the parish as a whole, but especially with the youth. And that was, to me, was something that was new. I had not experienced that. And what's great about that too is, as a younger guy, I'm able to see myself, kind of in his shoes and relate more with him and kind of envision myself, maybe priesthood could be a thing for me as well. All of that is to say that, this priest that I'm referring to, he did inspire a lot of Father Otto. Father Otto in the comics, he's a younger priest and, he's involved with the parish, but especially, with the kids of the parish. I think that, or at least I hope that, when people read this, they can see being a priest, they're still people, right? At the end of the day, like us. And so my hope is that, maybe people will see that, maybe young men will see that, and the idea of priesthood and praying about priesthood and possibly pursuing that as a vocation, I hope that it might inspire that in them.
I think that's a great motive, if you will, for having kind of this younger priest character in the cartoons. Because I think it is one of those things that I don't want to say everybody, because I'm sure there are people out there, young men out there who are inspired even when they have older priests that they've only known. But I think seeing younger priests is extremely inspirational for loads of young men. And I think being around, people who are in religious life at a younger age is really, really inspirational, actually for both young men and young women as well. But not everybody would have access to that. And so seeing it in a cartoon, I think, is a great way to kind of combat it. Humor as well has also it has a really unique way, doesn't it, of kind of opening people's hearts. Why do you think laughter can be such a powerful way of sharing the Catholic faith with people?
Humor is just such a universal way of connecting with people, smiling and laughing. We all can relate to that no matter what side of the planet you're on. So I think that works as a way, almost as like a bridge. It's not the destination, but it works as a bridge of connecting people, getting them to that point where now they may be curious or will want to learn more about the faith.
Yeah, and I think that's a great realization, isn't it? Because obviously I was talking with a priest friend of mine for one of the episodes earlier on, but he was talking about how trying to find those different bridges to bring people in and talk to them about the faith when maybe they're not necessarily ready to talk about everything in the faith.
Right.
But again, like you were saying, cartoons especially, it's a humorous way, but there is a lot of depth to that as well, because it's talking about the faith. And I mean, your cartoons find humor in everyday parish life, yet they're always filled with this affection for the church. How do you capture those kind of lighthearted moments while also revealing something very true, very beautiful about the Catholic faith?
Yeah. So I'd say for the lighthearted and maybe just the humor aspect and as a whole for the comics, I grew up reading comics. That was like the main thing I read growing up was just collection books of, old comics. And so I was just very familiar with the style and the humor. So to me, a lot of that kind of comes naturally, but kind of blending it with the faith, that as well, that comes just from my own upbringing. I was brought up Catholic, I was homeschooled. would go into daily mass for most of my life. So I was just very involved with, whatever parish I was a part of. And the faith was always just first and foremost in my life, thanks to my parents. So a lot of that, I guess it kind of comes naturally.
Do you find it, every creative project has obviously kind of moments of doubt and are we supposed to be following this path? Are we not? Have there been seasons where you've kind of questioned whether to keep going, and what has helped you remain faithful to that work?
I'd say yes. There are times, definitely, I can't lie, where, it's harder. Maybe a lack of inspiration, or maybe I'm just not seeing the fruits of my labor right away. And I think this is just for a lot of artists too. You work so hard on something and maybe it doesn't, I guess, perform well to people. There's always things like that. But I think that ultimately, what's helped me, for one thing, I really do truly believe that, God has a hand in this. And then this is something that God wants and he's calling me to do. For me, I just love what I'm doing. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the process of it. I just enjoy what I make, despite what, other people might think. And I think that's a very important thing. It's kind of a basic thing, but to really love what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing. And so that's really helped me a lot in kind of keeping going. And yeah, there's definitely times it's a bit of a struggle, but I'm always kind of able to lean on the fact that I believe that there's a higher purpose for this, that God has a plan.
I think that's a great way to look at it too, because when you do find yourself in that creative rut, if you will, or even just not even a creative rut, but you're just kind of, questioning like, is this how I'm supposed to be spending my time? Is this how I'm supposed to be actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Right.
But knowing that, first of all, like you were talking about earlier with that peace that you have inside you, I think that is such a huge clue that you're on the right path, and having that peace, because I know so many artists, and I mean, I was like this when I was trying to find kind of what creativity line I was supposed to be in, these sorts of things. Perhaps maybe how you felt with like when you're doing like the Norman Rockwell style as well, but you're kind of trying to do something and it's just not working. And you also just don't feel at peace with it. You're just like, there's something not exactly right here, or something's a bit off. And so then when you do find that creative line, I think that's really important, because you do feel this huge peace inside of you.
Oh, yeah.
As Catholics as well, we're often quite encouraged to seek truth and goodness and beauty. Where do you think humor and joy fit into that conversation? They definitely fit there, but where do you think they fit and how?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I think that I'm trying to think of, I know there's a lot of saints have even spoken on being joyful. I mean, St. Philip Neri, speaking on joy, and just as Catholics, that's what we should be. We should be joyful.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be dull and gloomy, but light and joyful. And so I think that the cartoons almost kind of embody that, because cartoons we always sort of associate with fun and humor and things like that. And so I think that I kind of, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, where humor sort of works as this bridge. I think that, despite this being a cartoon, it really is, to me, I still see it as art. A totally different kind of art that, most people aren't familiar, especially in faith, but it is still, art, something that can draw us deeper relationship with God, bring us to higher thinking. And I think humor, like we were saying too, it's a way of just breaking the ice and filling us with a lighter spirit. And that works as just a way of kind of bringing us to the faith if we use it properly.
Yeah. And I think too, what you were saying earlier about how when you were younger, you would read loads of comic books, like old comic books and things like that. And I was just thinking, actually, because I have a child who absolutely loves reading comics and would read comics before any other sort of literature, 100%. And I was thinking, there's actually not that much for her to read regarding the faith in the comic style or in the graphic novel style. But, you kind of opening that door of the fact that Catholicism can be integrated into cartoons, potentially into graphic novels, those sorts of things. I think it opens up a door of this idea of seeking truth, seeking goodness for Catholics that might have been actually closed, or at least partly ajar for a lot of people who don't naturally find reading very exciting, or they find comics and graphic novels a lot more accessible. And I think I was just like, you just speaking there just reminded me, I was like, I should maybe have her just read the comics instead. Because I think she, that's just a style of learning for some kids. That's just how they like to learn to read and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think by applying your Catholic characters into that style is really an accessible way for a lot of people that might, not necessarily sit down with a book on a saint or something.
Right.
So tell me about, you're currently working on an animated Christmas special. What has that journey been like, and what are you most excited for people to experience with that?
Yeah, so this is all fairly recent. It wasn't till May, April, around then when things really started getting official. So we're still very much in the thick of pre-production and kind of getting things ready. First of all, so the Christmas special, what we're trying to do, me and my publishers, Voyage Comics, our hope is to just bring all the characters like Father Otto and, all the other characters, to bring them to life, to have them animated and moving. And we want to make a Christmas special similar to Charlie Brown Christmas, which is something that almost everyone is familiar with. Using Charlie Brown as an example because these comics, they're very reminiscent of an older style. And that's, one of the gimmicks of this comic too, is it's sort of nostalgic feel. But really our goal is to, not just, for the sake of nostalgia, but we really want to bring something new. Hopefully this can be a tradition in Catholic homes in the future to be watching this every Christmas. On the production side of things, things are moving along very well. We're currently hiring animators and we're storyboarding everything, and the script's already written out. And in my opinion, it's a very, very good, very beautiful story. It's fun, as a cartoon should be, but there's still that very deeper side of it, the truth of Christmas and the birth of Christ. And so that's something that we're working hard on, and we're very excited for where God is taking us in all this, and, for the future and people eventually getting to see it.
That's amazing. And when are you hoping? So is it this Christmas or is it for next Christmas?
Yeah. So the hope is that it will be done August of 2027. So that way, Advent of 2027, we can have it released. Obviously, again, we're still kind of weaving our way through pre-production. So there's no concrete date yet, but we're fairly confident that next Christmas is when people will get to see it.
That's amazing. How is it going to be released? Do you know yet, or?
That we don't know just yet, unfortunately, but.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's loads of like kind of question marks in pre-production. So that's totally understandable. And how has creating the Catholic cartoon changed your own faith or the way that you experience parish life?
Well, for one thing, it certainly made me, more observant, looking for joke ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped me to really just sometimes, I'm making jokes, but other times I'm making more serious comics. And when I'm making a more serious and I guess holy comic, that allows me to really just sit with myself and to see where I am and to kind of pull from what I know, but also a way for myself to learn more about the faith. And so I would say that throughout these 4 years of making these Catholic comics, I've certainly grown far more in my faith and a deeper relationship with God and praying while I'm doing this, but also in connecting with other people in the faith, whether that's them asking me questions and, I have to learn more to answer these questions, or just, kind of guiding them, in the faith, whether it's deeper into the faith or maybe they don't know anything about the faith and they're curious and they want to know more. All around, this is really something that's drawn me a lot closer to God in all of it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because it's one of those things that obviously is growing your knowledge base a bit, which I think is amazing, but then also helping others kind of come to the faith as well. And looking back, what is creating the Catholic cartoon? What has it taught you about God that you don't think you would have learned another way?
Well, I think that, and maybe this isn't very deep, but I think this just has a lot to do with my own gifts. I was brought up Catholic, and so I'm surrounded by Catholics my whole life. And I was always kind of pushed by other people, not in a bad way, but they would be more encouraging for me to pursue the fine arts or sacred art. And so I spent the majority of my life trying that. And that was never something that really edified me personally. There's a lot of art that I made that I'm certainly proud of.
Yeah.
Done in that more, I suppose, realistic, style. But something that I've really learned is looking at what we have. What has God already given us? That's something that I think that's the one big lesson I've learned the most. And it's something I try to pass on to other artists as well, is to just kind of like take a step back and reflect and just see what God has given you. What things do you enjoy? And find a way that you can integrate that, into the faith. Find a way to integrate using that as a way to, bring people closer to God and to edify his people. My grandmother was actually the only one who was the most encouraging towards me in pursuing cartooning, because it was always like a hobby to me. I never saw it as something that could be anything more than just that, something to do on the side. But she was always like, no, you can really do something amazing with this. And so again, going back to that piece, right? I really felt like letting go. It really felt like this is just what God wants. I feel like I can trust him totally in this. And so to any artists out there, I always just encourage them to just kind of look at what you have, It's good to try and, maybe we want to be better at something and of course, pursue that, but don't be afraid to use what you have as well, the things that God has already given you, the gifts he's already given you.
That's a great tip. And actually, it's kind of answered my next question of if you could encourage one Catholic out there who's quietly carrying this creative dream, what would you want them to hear? And I think that's amazing. Is there anything else you kind of want to tag on to that just as inspiration?
I would say also just pray, make sure that you're praying and staying connected with God and in what you're doing and just to really enjoy the process of what you're doing, and it shouldn't be something that's making you anxious or stressed. It should be something that makes you happy and joyful.
That is some great advice. It's just such a great kind of note to end on because it's that idea of enjoying the process is so, so important because that's life basically too, isn't it? Just like enjoy the process of working towards heaven. So that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time.
And thank you so much to all of you for listening to this episode. Until next time, stay creative and keep making what matters most.